but I want to have faith in humans. Give me something to believe in. Earth below me, sky above me, fire within me. Brought to you by UPRN Network. I'm Trish Moe, and this is The Missing Piece. Good evening. It is Monday, May 16th. We are broadcasting live on New Orleans 105.3 FM and United Public Radio Network. I want to thank Carnation for sponsoring my first hour. And tonight I have so many exciting things planned. I want to welcome back, as I've promised. We've said it when Jill was on. We said it when Flood was here, that we were going to discuss the Sallie house finally, and tonight's the night, I guess. With this super blood moon energy still going on here, which is chaos, but I love it. So welcome. I have Jill Weaver back. I have John, Flood, Killian, Alejandro de la Via. Is that right?
De la Via.
And Walker Roberts. So welcome you all. This group, I can honestly say, actually, probably I met you all at a point that completely almost changed my path, but also changed my entire perspective of not only other research like investigative groups. I like to call you all research paranormal researchers, or but
I appreciate that.
rather than you're definitely not the typical ghost hunters, as they call it. So we and then I also, if you all stick around, I know my Horsefly Chronicles was a crazy chaotic event, super weird. I tried to log on, and this Owl Eyes portal page showed up, and then my computer crashed for like 30 minutes. So that was fun. But
great.
right? I'm like, what? What is happening? So that happened. But I do have a surprise later as well, a surprise guest for this eclipse. This eclipse energy. So I'm really looking forward to that. And other than that, it's Mo Monday, so we can get into this. Yes. Where do we even start with this? Oh, this beast. So in traditional fashion of, I had this entire like PowerPoint presentation thing that I've actually been working on for like 4 months, and all these like links and pictures and all kinds of stuff. And all of a sudden, like I even got off work early today, and it worked. And then an hour ago, it said the file was corrupt and completely deleted it. So there's that. Thank you, Sallie House.
For a place that is notorious for apparently wanting to be talked about, it goes to great lengths to make sure that you can't share exactly what you want to talk about.
No, absolutely not. So when I first, John, how long were you all there? You were there 3 days total?
2
days?
Yeah, 2 days. You showed up on the evening of our second day, so by that point we had been there roughly about 25 hours, I think, by the time you showed up.
And it was also a full moon. It was
That's true.
Yule Eve.
Which, by the way, Jill got the greatest shot out of that whole trip outside when the moon was full. I'm sure I posted that on the Instagram, but I'll boost it again.
Of the moon?
Yeah, with the streak that showed up that wasn't there, and
right.
3 photos that I took.
Wow.
It was also Mother's Night that night. In the pagan tradition, that's Freya's night. That's Freya's where you slaughter the pig. That's why we eat ham at Christmas, is because of Freya.
I went outside at some point there to get my camera, and it stopped working. It wouldn't work, so I did not get any pictures outside that night. I barely got any inside for that matter. So um,
I have
I
externals. I think I've probably shared them already, but I will double check to see they're on there. When I first get to a location, that's the first thing I do is I just take all my external shots, just walk the whole property before I even go in. Because sometimes you'll see people peeking in the windows waiting for you to come in.
Oh, that's interesting, especially at that place.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
They peeked at us when we left.
yeah.
I was about to say, yeah, like in our case, it was more of them peeling the blinds back on, like, Jesus, are they getting out of here yet? Go already.
Oh my gosh. I'm
Yeah.
gonna show you. I'm gonna have to take a picture and post it on my page of my neighbor's house, which is abandoned now. And that just happened. Like all of their windows are all of a sudden like peeled back in the last day. And I'm like, that reminds me of something. Um but one of the first things that John did was take me around back of the house. And this is something that I don't think, um, Jill and I discussed this briefly one time. But you took me around the back of the house and you were telling me that that used to be the front of the house, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and the road was it moved or renamed?
I can't remember the exact history of it. If I might be completely wrong about this, but I think like the river flooded at one point and it kind of damaged where Second Street originally was, which was
One
alongside the
over,
river
yeah.
there. And so they kind of fortified the hills and built up a little bit of a dam with the earth there, and then moved the street over to the other side of the house. And that's why all of those houses have this front porch vibe in the back, but it's reverse. So but again, don't quote me on that. It's history gets a little bit fuzzy with that town because a lot of documents were damaged apparently during this very same flood. So they say.
Yeah, that's
Oh, we're gonna get back in there.
that's interesting. But that made me think, and then Jill and I were talking about, I have visited on numerous occasions the International Forest of Friendship. I visited Mount Vernon Cemetery, and I also ended up at on the opposite side by accident at that other cemetery. I believe it is uh, like Sugar or something, or maybe it's the Oak Hill. Um, but in Atchison, I get very turned around when it comes to directions. I don't know whether it's like something magnetic there or but I was thinking about that. I'm like, that's the one thing of this house that could possibly have affected it shoot the town forever. Is the fact that the front is the back is the front. So think about the energy. Like that's like the chi of the house. And so if it constantly has people coming in the back door, like, you know,
Yeah, that completely changed the feng shui of the house completely.
And the city, and it made me think about that. Getting if they've changed roads and things like that. And we were talking about, if revisiting places, if we've all had past lives there at some point, and you go back to a place the way you remember it, and then everything's opposite, and it would definitely screw up your internal compass. And the same with the entry and exit to the city itself. The times that I went the other direction, the back way from my parents' house, my car would have that, do the weird thing like I was in an accident right before I got into town. But when I came from Topeka, it didn't do that. So maybe I went in the front door that time. I don't know.
It's a weird approach energy when you first drive into town. It's not like any other town I've ever like driven into. It's kind of hard to explain to people, but it has a very odd feeling. And I agree with you. It almost feels like the energy is kind of still swirling, or everything was going one way and then all of a sudden it was just like shifted the other. I had a terrible time driving in town, and the town is not complicated by any stretch of the imagination. And I was like, Walker, you just got to help me. I got lost in the cemetery, and I just don't know what it was. It's like there's this swirling energy there, and it's really kind of confusing.
Well, we even talked about the disorientation that we all had within the house itself. How you could attribute a fair amount of it to shoddy carpentry, but we all expressed moments of moving through that house and feeling like we moved from one place to another, moving in and out of different rooms. It and really, again, like you pull that scope back and you look at the whole town, you're absolutely right. I think anybody who is even remotely sensitive to this type of stuff is going to feel the same thing that we all felt when we started to move towards that town. Is a few miles before you hit that threshold, there's like this subtle pressure, you know. And sometimes it manifests in different ways for all of us. For me, I smell jasmine anytime it's starting to build up like that, but it's it's palpable out there.
Yeah, you really feel the water energy. And I wasn't, I'm not familiar with Kansas at all. That was my first trip out there. So I was not expecting to feel water energy. I just don't know what I was expecting to feel, maybe kind of more earth energy.
Mm.
But it feels a lot like West Baden. If you go down to West Baden in Indiana, there's underground springs everywhere, and that's exactly how that hotel feels. It almost feels like you're getting almost kind of seasick, like you're actually like rocking on water.
Hmm.
It has a
Oh,
little
that's
bit of that vibe
interesting.
there.
Yeah. On the way into town, I definitely felt like we had crossed like a surface tension of like a bubble, energetic bubble through there. For sure.
So I'm wondering if if anybody's ever, I mean, I'm sure they have, but in recent years, anyone's ever tested the actual, there's been like the chemical spill and everything in 2016, um, different, um, they've had more floods, they've had other things go on. I wonder if it's the ground, not only the water there, but the soil also has ever been tested as far as like radiation levels, metal, things like that. Um,
That's something that I'd be really interested in
mhm.
diving back into the next time I go out there because again, if you scale it back and start to look at the whole town, the surrounding area as a giant anomaly within itself, then yeah, why aren't we taking the full scientific approach? Let's get like soil samples. Let's understand the geological makeup of the area. This is the stuff that I would really like to start doing deeper dives into for sure.
It is the karst topography. I mean,
Yeah.
they have a distillery there, so there have got to be caves. There's got to be
Oh.
limestone
Yeah.
there, and
Mhm.
that I always joke about wherever you have karst, you always have good bourbon, and you also have ghosts.
Well, and I didn't realize. So there used to be an old coal mine there,
Mm.
way back in the day. And then as far as limestone goes, it's well known, especially in Kansas, that spirits apparently this is something I just learned, but it's all over the internet. It's everyone there talks about it. But a lot of the dirt roads and stuff have limestone in them, and they said spirits, for whatever reason, um, limestone like absorbs, or they're able to manifest with limestone. Something about that, like they are able to attach, which kind of makes sense, I guess.
It's a real porous stone. It's
Yeah.
very water soluble. I mean, that's how you get the caverns, is you get any kind of water leaching through, and it just dissolves these caverns.
You get the stone tape theory going in with
Mhm.
that, which doesn't necessarily have to be limestone, although, like, more often than not, whenever this subject comes up, that is why limestone does pop in because it is so, like, soft and malleable as opposed to other stones. But yeah, I mean, like,
It's also, and the only reason I thought of this was because, um, when Alejandro, you had the letter tiles. Um,
Bananagrams, yeah.
Yes, yes. I
Yeah.
love that.
They're great.
But I came up with I had a picture when I got home on my phone. It like I didn't even realize I took it or that my camera was on or anything, like a very blurred picture of only one of the kind of channeled messages you got that said soul ties.
Mm.
And so I was discussing this with John one time. I was like, wait a minute, why do I keep getting Korea? Why do I keep getting Korea with soul ties? Well, Seoul, Korea. So both Atchison and Seoul, Korea are on the 39th parallel. The 39th parallel was the first great arc triangulation between here, Kansas and Utah back in the, I don't know, like 18, well, it would have been like early 1900s when the first surveyors, but it's opposites too. So like Bleeding Kansas was in 1855-ish, I want to say. I had a presentation on this. I really did. I came prepared. but that didn't work out. So I want to say it was it was between 1853 and 1855. But so was uh the the Korean War was in the 1950s. So to me, everything um as within so without, so if people think of it that way, everything on the opposite side of the world, especially something it's kind of the whole law of the universe, and karmic and ties and stuff, because something that tragic caused basically a civil war within Kansas. Um, took 100 years to seep through. If you think of the Earth as a house, or we're like the heartland, to seep through to the other side of the world, and caused a separation in that country. Well, wouldn't say caused it, but I'm saying that energy. It's kind of like you become the people that you surround yourself with, the energy that you surround yourself with, even if it's neighbors. And I think that's what's happened to that town as well.
It's an interesting town. It's I've traveled a lot and I haven't experienced any place quite like it.
I think the McIntyre Villa is on that same parallel too. A few blocks down, and it's supposed to be haunted. So
I am deeply disappointed to find out that I can't remember the place right across the street from Sallie House.
uh, Glick
The Glick
Mansion.
Yeah,
Mansion.
the Glick Mansion. It's permanently closed.
And
Oh,
also, which I just looked it up yesterday or the day before, it's owned now by real estate investors. And some of their properties are named after the colored door, like blue door property, green door property, which is interesting in itself, because we talked about that as well with all the red doors. So,
What's behind the red door?
right.
Mm. No, but I hope that they will end up opening that back up because I think Trish, maybe that was you and I that was talking about this, or like somebody within this group about doing multiple experiments across the
Yeah.
entirety of Atchison simultaneously and seeing if we can start getting like mirrored responses at different locations, or just seeing what happens, because the whole town's active. You throw a rock, you hit something haunted, apparently. Let's go to the Elks
Yes.
Lodge.
Yeah, I at least want to investigate all the places that are owned by the Finney family.
Mhm.
I think that would be really interesting to see what kind of energy passes through like all of their places.
How many properties did they own?
It
I want
was
to say we found at least 20. We
it
didn't
was
like find the
20 or
specific
25,
addresses,
Walker
but
said.
yeah.
yeah, that was like the research said that that was like kind of the estimate of how many total that they owned.
Wow. And if you take it even a step further than that, a lot of those homes were owned by former congressmen, senate, things like that as well. So that's going like way back to even a lot of the first established laws of our country and such. People that lived there after that. So,
Yeah.
which is interesting. I think
So,
Glick himself was a former, I believe, a congressman.
yeah.
Oh,
I think even the visitors, the convention center there, when you go and you know, get your T-shirts and everything, I think they've probably got activity there. I'm kind of kicking myself that I didn't ask the docent about it.
So one thing I know you all talked about on one of your podcasts shoes as well. And I saw something about that at the visitor center, but then I also read about it in regards to the Delgert house. They said that when they were restoring the house, they found some Civil War era military boots in under some floorboards, and that was actually a tradition back in the day to place shoes in the foundation of the house. And I've read this um, many, like in old newspapers and such, regarding Atchison specifically, where they did it with children's shoes and adults because they considered it a form of protection for the house. Have you all?
That's a new one on me.
yeah.
It was Alejandro that mentioned, you know, he didn't want to take his shoes off, and it
That was
just
from a
occurred to
dream
me.
you
Yeah,
had, right?
yeah. I'd had a dream about 2 weeks previous to visiting the house, with the three of us, Flood and Walker and myself. Um, in the dream, it was more of like a warehouse type building. But there was a very clear message. Just going through it in short, there was a very large, threatening male presence, and that was not chasing us around, but like very. Uh, okay, so there wasn't any like verbal communication, but there was a very like upfront, you're not welcome here. And the where the shoes part came into that was that the three of us, none of us were wearing shoes, and there was a very much like a feeling like we need to go get our shoes. This isn't somewhere to be without your shoes. And so the thing with that was like taking off your shoes in someone else's house. It's like, you're getting comfortable there. And that's clearly not the case at the Sallie house. We're not supposed to be comfortable there. We'll never be welcome there. And that was what I took from that was like, don't take off your shoes. We're not, we're not welcome there.
Oh, that's another soul ties thing too, though, because souls to
Yeah.
your feet.
Yeah. And
Well,
shoelace
that's funny because it hadn't occurred
Yeah.
like just this moment. But I was wearing a brand new pair of boots, and when I got home, the buckles were broken. I had to actually send them back.
Wow.
Brand new. It was like first out of the box, and I was like, "This is weird." We didn't really do anything, but walked to town. Basically, we walked around town. We walked around the cemetery. And that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never set foot on the floor without shoes. I had some slippers, some Converse style slippers, and I went right from my boots into those immediately. I never once set like socked foot on the floor of the Sallie house. So I held true to that.
I did,
Yeah.
and I was definitely more physically affected than Hondro.
I did, and I was quite comfy when I did. So what can I
That's
say?
interesting.
John even took a shower there. So
I did. Yeah.
Mhm.
I would not have done that.
I did.
Oh.
I wouldn't.
I didn't want to be in the
So-
bathroom alone.
So I was walking around with Walker, and we went in the bathroom, and I'm like, "God, why does this look familiar? Like, what is?" And then I figured it out like a few months later when I went back home. I was at my parents' house, and they had the exact same picture of seashells in their bathroom, and I was like, I was on the phone with John. I'm like, no way. I was like, this isn't happening right now. And then as far as other synchronicities, the dream you're talking about in the shoes, last full moon, which I was at Truck Hinge, whole other, which is also by a rock quarry and salvage yards. You have all the metal, you have all the weird stuff, and then it's also by the old Billard Airport here. And so their house was a restored hangar, actually, like a giant warehouse looking thing.
Cool.
And that's why I sent you that picture. I was like, I'm at this shoe tree, like in the middle of at nighttime. We decided to take a walk back into my friend and I back into this creepy, trail by this hangar, and they have all these shoes hanging from this tree, and you could see the full moon and stuff. And as we were walking, swear to God, there was this. I don't even know if he was human, but and I'm not afraid of like most spirits or aliens or monsters, whatever. They don't give me that feeling. This thing was like probably 7, 8 foot tall, and I completely sober, and it was early. It was like 10, 11 at night. Um, and it kept getting faster and closer, and all of a sudden all the animals like literally ran out of the forest, out of all the bushes around us, and I was like, that usually animals come to me, they don't run from me. And that's when I turned around, he kept getting closer. I'm like, there's this giant being like come right sneaking up behind me. And then he got closer, and I turned around, he just turned around and walked back, but it wasn't even walking like a human. So that's interesting that you had that you had that
Yeah,
dream about.
especially because in my dream it was definitely like a cement warehouse kind of a building. So that sounds pretty similar to a hangar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just the other day I was thinking about Sallie House, of course, and then I was thinking about Walker. We were upstairs, and you put your hand on the door to the attic at one point. I was like sitting on the floor or something, and I literally saw he was behind me, but I saw, in my mind, the doorknob almost catch on fire, literally, and like it was trying to harm him, or like something was in the attic. And so the other day I kept getting that. I kept hearing, he's in the attic, he's in the attic. And I'm like, that is one thing we never got to do, is go in the attic or ever even, because it was locked, right? Like
It was like
Yeah, we
fastened
didn't have
shut.
access.
Yeah.
so and that's when I was looking through, um something told me to look at a picture from from the prior year on the same date. And the only picture I had from that day, for whatever reason, was a screenshot of a meme that says "Careful who you touch," and it had, everybody knows the meme of like a demonic devil hand or something touching, like shaking hands with a person. I'm like, that's interesting, because that was right when you touched the door. And before that, when we'd been walking around up there, I said something was trying to hold my hand, and it was right after that too. And then after you got away from the door, you said something about your hand, or the doorknob felt funny or something. And all of a sudden you went by the stairs, and it's like, push him, trying to tell me to push you down the stairs. And I was like, okay. But I can see, if people who aren't used to that, used to spirits trying to manipulate them, that could be really dangerous, because it was very, almost sounded like my own voice, mimicking my own voice in my head. Um,
Yeah, like making thoughts happen, and just like
right.
that's what I'd heard from the house too. Is like, I think that was one of Tony's last straws. Was like, him getting kind of pushed down the stairs, and that was him kind of leaving the house. So I'd have definitely heard stories of that happening, and I think that some of our energy could be very similar to that. Kind of feeling of like, yo, we need to like kind of get these people where try to affect them as much as possible. Is definitely one of the vibes that I
Hmm.
was feeling was coming at us.
Both of the staircases in the house are treacherous just to begin with.
Oh yeah.
The basement is really scary. The whole bottom stair is like basically
Missing. Yeah.
missing. And then the staircase going upstairs, wasn't it like heavily carpeted, and they were kind of narrow steps?
It was, yeah. I mean, really, you could fit maybe 2/3 of your foot on each step. It's not big, they're not big stairs by any means. They're,
Yeah, and it was tough to like.
you know,
It wasn't wide enough to really like walk by someone on the
Mhm.
stairs. So it was like a narrow, kind of weird staircase.
Yeah, and the banister was a little bit rickety, so we felt like this. It really was kind of treacherous going up and down.
Yeah, and I personally was way too tall for the entire house, so
Yes,
that
we
was
made
a
a
whole
comment
nother
about the bathroom.
obstacle.
We were talking about the upstairs bathroom because the downstairs, this literal little water closet, like Walker could barely like fit in.
Oh, that was the only one I used though, because I knew someone was close by every time. I wasn't gonna be upstairs by myself if I had to go to the bathroom.
I took a shower. I had no fear. I needed a shower. Those of you who have not traveled with me trapped into a tiny little car, I needed a shower. I really did. It was for the betterment of all mankind, I promise.
Yeah, with the scary holes in the floor in the bathroom upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, literally. You
Oh,
could rock down that corner where there's a hole, and it would fall into the basement.
so that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. I also got, as far as holes and houses and stuff, there's in the basement, when well, first of all, I kept seeing like all these different battles between like archangels and stuff, and it mimics Stoll in a way, because Stoll is infamous for the seven portals to the heavens and hells, um but what I was going to say about that, so as far as doorways and stairs and all of these things, we were talking about the different um the parallel and the ley lines and things like that, and the portal, supposedly in the basement, um the pentagram that they covered up and burned and all this stuff, which is so ridiculous. But anyways, I'm not gonna voice my opinion on that one. But do you all think, and I've thought this a long time, especially as witches being burned forever, that your actual soul, kind of like the snap theory, is fragmented in different places. So when people start changing or boarding up doors or portals or moving ley lines or all of these things, uh because it was a few months later that I was literally like haunted by a wraith, um which is, I'm pretty sure, was still from Sallie house, but they go in search of their, trying to find their souls in their bodies, correct? Is anybody familiar?
I am
With-
not.
I am not. I mean, the type of soul fragmentation I was familiar with is that at death you fracture into as many as 5 parts. So your soul is eternal, and you can reincarnate, and then really what's left, it's part of you, but it's not your consciousness. It's kind of more of your personality and your traits. So when you encounter spirits, they're very much like they were in life. If they're angry, sad, whatever type of people they were, that's kind of like the residue that gets left. So I don't know if you actually try to, there's a part of you that's trying to seek out those parts. I know people that you can do it, as a living person, you can do that. You can try to recall all the fragmented pieces of yourself, but I'm not familiar with.
Well, I'm wondering if, throughout history, because that would make a lot of sense, why there'd be a lot of these highly pissed off spirits, because one, when people are going around opening and closing portals and doing stuff that they don't really know what they're messing with a lot of the times, or trying to move ley lines and stuff, um not only does the bad get trapped, like imprisoned there in that timeline, in that dimension, whatever, but the good does too, which would eventually become bad if somebody was trapped in a specific. And the reason this comes up, it's came so often recently, there's been stories coming out of people getting stuck in, um, like parallel universes, parallel dimensions, going through. I heard it last night, a story of a kid that went, and it came in his house through the front door, went out the back door. When he came back in for dinner, the whole house had changed. It was different furniture, different, his parents were gone, nobody was there. He was still very much alive. He went to the police station. They tried to hunt down his parents.
Mhm.
Nothing was the same though. Where he lived was, the apartment complex was renamed or whatever. Nobody, um, his family was long gone, didn't exist.
Oh, I see.
So,
Like dimension jumping.
right.
So you're
And that's
you're opening and closing like spiritual doors, and
right.
could that happen? Yeah, I mean, conceivably, I would think that could. I mean, I know you're really into like the Irish tradition, and there's an old Irish tale about some awareness of that can happen. They always say, it used to be if you were on your horse and you had that vibe, all of a sudden, if things change, they said, don't get off your horse, just keep riding, and you will eventually get back to your dimension. And something similar to that happened to some friends of mine. They were they went to Sedona for the weekend, and then when they were leaving, they said all of a sudden landmarks looked really different.
Mhm.
And one of them was like, we need to stop and we need to get out, maybe like try to figure out what's going on. And the other woman, she was familiar with this legend, and she says, no, you just keep driving, don't get out and explore why it's different or what's changed. And sure enough, they just stayed in the car, they kept driving, and then after about 10 or 15 minutes, all the familiar landmarks returned. But there was some kind of a shift that happened, and I do believe you can get trapped in those shifts if you're.
I know, my kids and I were literally in a different dimension for 3 days one time, and everybody, I guess in this reality, thought we were gone for like a week. But yeah, it was terrifying. Everything was the same, yet I'm assuming it was in the future because it was more advanced. Like there were a lot of machines. Everything was robotic. Um, but I think the way we got out, which not even on I didn't realize it at the time, was we went to a hotel. Hotels only have one way in, one way out, usually. And she uses the emergency exit. But um I think when they flip houses like that, or even board up doors, a lot of houses have hidden rooms, hidden that aren't the same.
Mhm.
Now,
I think it definitely changes the energy of a place when you start doing that. And it's interesting to me that that spirits respect like a physical door anyway. I mean, we had a case where the family, they were fleeing this, it was sort of a poltergeist entity, and they would go in their room and close the door, and it would bang on the door and the door would rattle, but it couldn't actually open the door, which is kind of silly when you think about it. It's like it's this energy being, why it can't just go through the door. But there's something like a psychological protective thing, is that if you think that door stops something, then it stops something.
Yeah,
when you were a kid
finishing
with
the
the
psychic
blanket.
loop, basically. Yeah.
like in Beetlejuice.
Kind of. But actually, like going back to what you were saying about like different dimensions, I have been up to my neck in Mandela effect research for like the last couple of weeks. And um that's like the idea of alternate dimensions speaks to me because I honestly think I may be experiencing it myself. Like even looking through the ridiculousness of the Mandela effect, there are a few things that chime in and make sense to me, and it's weird that the rest of the world doesn't remember them the same way that I do. So I think there is something to be said for multiple realities layered on top of each other, and you know, maybe
Yeah.
some of us actually have the opportunity to kind of peek through to the other side and see what's going on. Or maybe we get completely shifted over sometimes, which is kind of what I think has happened to me.
That's what I was going to say,
But
because just just last week, and this is something really simple, but I'm like, No, I swear I was at Walmart of all, I mean, that in its place in itself is like another dimension, but like you'll lose
One
out.
of
I
pure
have lost
terror.
hours there. Like,
God,
but
it's
I
like a
was leaving.
Lovecraftian consumerism nightmare.
Yes, I go there and I come out with one bag and like $200 later, and I lost like 3 hours of my life. Insanity. And so I was leaving, and the exit, like, I'm like, okay, they always had the exit on the left-hand side at our Walmart and the entrance on the right-hand side when you walk, you walk out the doors. And it was switched. It said, I started going out the exit, and of course, so there's all these people coming in that way, and I look up and I'm like, oh, sorry. And I had to switch over. And I'm like, I know that was the opposite like a week ago. There's because you develop a habit of, it's like muscle memory of doing something a certain way. And I asked my friends, they're like, yeah, of course, it's always been on that side. I'm like, well, it's not now. So
So did it end up going back to the way it was after that incident?
I'm trying not to go back to Walmart.
That's so wise.
Well,
No, but I haven't
even
been back
without the
since then.
paranormal event, that's probably a good thing
Yeah.
to stick to. So
Yeah, I haven't. That was like last week, so I haven't been back since then. But yeah, that was something I definitely. I'm like, do other people notice? Are they just trying to mess with us? Like, or was that one of those
Is
portal
it
days that I
You
wasn't
went into one
aware of?
Walmart and came out a different one.
right. Well,
Ooh.
no, and see, there's the thing is like we're talking about portals and these different layers of reality. I'm the more and more I dive into this world, the more I start to lean into that's what we're experiencing with all paranormal activity. It's these flickers of experiences where different layers of reality cross over just for a few minutes, or maybe sometimes more on the regular. But yeah, it's fascinating. Like the deeper into the rabbit hole I go, the really closer I get to that whole everything is connected thing where I start hopping on the soapbox and screaming it at people at bus stops. But we're not going to do that.
Well, Flood, when we were talking about this, when we were sitting around the campfire, you talked about the Mandela effect. And what I think would be interesting is to do a survey and find out which of your friends or people all have the exact same memory, because I think it would be interesting to see who you have been with in each of these different realities. Like, do we all sort of stay in that same reality together? Because it seems like we had a lot of things in common when you were naming off all these anomalies. And it's like, I think that would be really interesting to have a database of what people remember. Was it Stouffer's or was it Kraft stuffing?
With Stouffer's.
Kind of almost like categorize people like, okay, I'm in the Stouffer's universe where you
Right. Yeah. No, that's a good point though. Yeah.
I mean, really, like actually use it like for like a data collection, and kind of go through and just see how many of those points of commonality you have. And then you're actually sort of mapping this anomaly.
Yeah. And I suppose the biggest one would be to obviously start with those who do remember Nelson Mandela's death in the 80s, like I do.
I do. I remember his death.
Exactly. So that seems to, I think the reason it got the name the Mandela effect is that seems to be like the earliest discrepancy that people can track down, at least at the moment. I'm sure with more time and research, we'll find more, but that seems to be the whopper, like the big cultural event as opposed to iconography and consumerism based representations of this. Like we always want to go with icons or logos of things or Berenstain Bears, but looking for the cultural events, I think that's the really fascinating stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so quick survey then. So among us here, how many think that he died in the 80s?
Yes.
Okay, so we're all in agreement on that.
Oh no, that wasn't what I remember.
Yeah, definitely.
You don't remember? Okay, so 2. Okay.
Not that I was around in the 80s by any means, but
Well, this is what I was going to say. Do you think that because it seems like the younger generations, what they have seen of historical events is when it seems to shift, when it changes. Because I heard one today too that was just it was a stupid Britney Spears. They're like, who remembers that she had a microphone like a
Yeah.
attached to her ear in most of her pop videos? I do. And
Yeah.
anybody you ask now or any of the videos, she doesn't have that.
Hmm.
I'm like, I know she
Well,
had
that's
that
interesting.
because
Okay, so
yeah.
there's like a generational breakdown on this. That's interesting
So
too.
do you think in that case that it's a multi-layered universe thing, or do you think it's time travel and something's been altered?
I think that one event, like the Mandela event in particular, might have kind of started a ripple effect, because if you talk to people in different age groups, but you start to reference things that maybe came a little bit later than our time, something that they might connect with, you find the same type of discrepancies in a more modern sense. But it's a really good point. Like, we should, yeah, as we continue to do this, we should actually set up a full blown survey. Let's cover a total of age groups ranging from like 15 to 65 and up, even, and I don't know, 10, 20 questions. That would be fun. That would be
No.
I think it'd be really interesting to see, and like you said, do the demographic, the age breakdown, and see, because maybe that will give you kind of an idea when those slippages or when those things changed.
right. Yeah. See if we
And
can pinpoint the times in time that these kind of fractures happen.
it's hard because of course, anyone from the 60s to the 80s, um for the most part, anything off the wall, there's so much discredit given to that generation because they're like, oh, that's a bunch of hippies. And there was a lot of, like mushrooms and all kinds of, for whatever,
Oh, there
so
isn't now.
right. I'm like, and that changed when?
Nothing
What?
changed.
Like, but that, what I'm saying? Like, there was a lot that went on in the world during that time, and it seems to be just brushed off as like all that, they don't know what they were talking about during that. Like, they didn't remember anything until after the 80s. So if you're born any time with between the 60s and then um, but yeah, I think that'd be an amazing
Well, you
research
can read
project.
yeah, I think that's really interesting because that kind of came out of the McCarthyism. I knowing what I know now, like why were people so against like the hippies? Like I had older friends that were hippies, and they would walk through town and people would throw rocks at them if you were wearing bell bottoms and love beads and
Yeah.
long hair. Like people would throw rocks at you. Like hippies were like this enemy, and it's like, why is that? Because there's a fraction of that now. It's like anytime anybody has opened up their consciousness to these other things, it's like what they're doing is incredibly harmless. It has nothing to do with you, so why do you care so much? Why do you have to disparage somebody for being like a hippie or
Yeah,
Don't
absolutely.
challenge my fragile reality. No. Yeah.
Real
Yeah.
quick, she just showed up. I have a surprise, a special guest for you all. I love this moon energy and like to honor that. So I am going to welcome Snow Raven from Olax. She is going to perform. I have seen her. The first time I saw her was on gosh, years ago, America's Got Talent, um, with your brother, I
My
believe.
soul brother.
Y- Okay, yeah, do an amazing performance to "Zombie" by Cranberries. Correct? Was that one of
Yeah.
your first? Yeah,
Mhm.
and so I just wanted, she's going to do one song. Um, you're the creator of the reindeer breath. Is that
Yeah, the
correct?
RGB box, the mimicking of reindeer breath, comes from nomadic people of my homeland. I was born and raised in Arctic Siberia, Republic of Sakha-Yakutia, and I'm indigenous Sakha. So we have in entire Arctic Siberia, we have over 30 different tribes. And
Wow.
yeah, so I came to United States 4 years ago, and I'm a singer, creator of music project, Olox Records, actually. So I'm going to work with the indigenous artists, musicians too, and electronic musicians from Western culture too. The whole idea is to unite people, to unite, indigenous and Westerners. And I'm working on also creating Kutsur Temple of Shamanism and Science. So I have team right now. I'm in New Mexico. I'm traveling
Yes.
these days,
My
and
home state.
yeah, you told me so. And your homeland saying hi to you. So it's my team is here, and the whole music, this traditional songs I sing was taught by my grandmother when I was 3 years old,
Oh,
and
wow.
mimicking birds and animal sounds that was taught by nature. So, and bringing that very important message that we're all indigenous to Mother Earth. It's very important message coming from from our hearts. And I would love to share with you a traditional song, and also I will play this instrument. We call that hummus, but there are like over 100 types of this instrument around the world. And this is, you can call it mouth harp, chow harp, or juice harp. And this is made in my culture by native indigenous blacksmith. So I'm going to share with you that vibrations. Sainin haraksar biricikti tügenge haylam iyer. Buman namustubut barang-orang kaitare baralarin algestan, harestan, arcelan, arangacelan. Dom, dom, domini dom. Machtal. Machtal means thank you.
Whew.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank
So
you.
Raven Serena, man, I have the chills. That completely directed or directly channeling the source right there. That's amazing, amazing gift you have, and I'm so honored that you shared that with us. Um, where can people find your you also give lessons, correct, on the mouth?
I do. I have 4 different courses. First one is how to open up your own voice, because I believe everyone can sing and everyone has their own unique voice. It's more about self-expression to connect to the nature of yourself, right? And with the universe within you. Then the second course is about mimicking birds and animal sounds, that connects you to the mother nature. And the third one is how to play mouth harp. And the fourth one is how to do Arctic beatbox by the mimicking of reindeer breath. So that's basically what I did. right? So
That's amazing. I love that.
and yeah, besides that, I have 2 albums on Spotify, Apple Music. Those are pretty old albums. I'm working on the third, the new one, more ceremonial, and maybe putting that on blockchain, because I'm very interested on decentralized world, that how we can, all together build Web3 and not bringing old paradigm to that dimension.
Yes.
So I'm bringing shamanic perspective into blockchain. I truly believe that peer-to-peer technology, that's the future. That's how we can rise up and be awakened as individuals, and also come together as a collective consciousness to take care of Earth, our home, and and hand it to future generations. And so you can find me easily on YouTube channel by Olox Records. So if you Google Olox, it will just pop up our website. And also on Instagram, I go as a Snow Raven. It has like 8 as an infinite sign in the beginning and in the end. 8 Snow Raven 8. And Facebook, as a Snow Raven. Facebook, Instagram, also TikTok. I have the majority of my crowd on TikTok too, as a Olox Records. So Olox Records is going to be a platform where we would like to bring indigenous musicians, representatives of their cultures, and basically collaborate with the electronic music, like DJs or musicians, because I do electronic music and I do combine all of the sounds with electronic beats. So, yeah, so that's pretty interesting life.
Well, I definitely look forward to having you on again in the future. And thank you for sharing with us, especially on this day with, like I said, with the moon energy. I love it.
Oh,
And I will send you. So this has to do with Sallie House too. I got this tattoo a few days before I went there, and my artist, I just let them draw up whatever they want, and this is what he came up with, and it looks much like.
wow.
I'll have to send you a picture. You can't see it. But it looks like her in a lot of her performances, which synchronicities. So that was ironic.
Yeah, I have my usually I wear my special the shamanic outfit, which made by indigenous, the how we call sewer designer, or the costume maker. So we were designing it together, and then, for me it's very important who makes that, because they put their energy in that too, and
Yes.
connected. So that gives me a lot of confidence, and then it makes me completely to be empty and invite my ancestors when I perform. Yeah, I have like it's a different outfit. So, and that video where I was in America's Got Talent, and one viral video I have, that very looks like your tattoo, actually, when I wear
Yeah, there's
that
a lot of them.
outfit.
Yeah. And that's
Mhm.
why, I've been introduced to all of these fine people. We have Jill at the top, Flood and Alejandro, and Walker Roberts at the bottom here. So I was introduced, well, intuitively led to all of them as well. So thank you again, and I can't wait. I look forward to our future meetings as well. So
Yes, please. I'm honored to be in your circle and sharing um, sharing my ancestry and my culture with you. Thank you so much. It's very good to see you here, and hopefully being here um, next time.
yes.
Snow Raven, thank you so much for coming and sharing your gifts with us. Is absolutely beautiful. I got you on Spotify, and I'm looking forward to listening to more.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mhm, mhm.
Speaking, I real quick before you go, do you ever do this might be something, we try to bring in energies from many different backgrounds as far as um anytime I'm at certain, especially sacred ground and places like that. Do you ever do remote um kind of remote channeling type things like that, or have you ever?
Channeling with the person.
Well, when the person is at a different site, like if I was at,
Mm.
one location and we called you up on video or whatever, and in the same way, people do with like mediums and things like that.
Oh yeah, so there's the whole another conversation. I have that in my culture, the 12 different levels of the shamans,
Hmm.
and the shamans who can do that, who can connect telepathically with people in wherever they are, far distance or close, it doesn't matter. They are from around like 8 7 sky. So I have a straight blood, shaman's blood. There was a woman, we call them udagan, in my lineage. And I'm being very gentle towards this opening in myself, and
Hmm.
I'm somewhere in the beginning, and I can do certain things. I can, for example, do wedding ceremonies, or come and we call that purification of the house, right, or blessing of the house, or connecting to the local spirits and the land spirits. Analakchin Khotun, doing the ceremony of the offering to the fire, Hatante Maria, spirit of fire. And then I cannot do certain things unless I go back to my home, and connect to shaman teacher. For example, I do support shamans around the world. They're in their ceremonies, sitting there, and holding space musically. Like I recently did 3 hours of singing nonstop, and that and I the lineage where I come from, we don't use any plant medicine. It's we believe in psychedelic state of consciousness, which everyone have, but the
Oh
thing
yeah.
is, yeah, that the thing is how we can have access to that, right? Like there are certain techniques or teachers. It could be master plant medicine according to some shamanic cultures, or it could be being mindfulness, yoga, breathing technique. um what else? A pain, coming out of comfort zone, right? Some trauma can happen to a person, and all of a sudden, they transform that energy. There are like certain ways to get there according to many cultures, and that's a mystery of life. I'm studying it, and I also experience that, and I'm sure everybody is experiencing this awakening of their inner healer, inner shaman, inner teacher.
Oh gosh, and you're in New
Beautifully put.
Mexico. That means I've been here and I need to go home for years. So that's probably my that's
Mm.
probably my next step. Well, thank you. I
Thank
will
you.
get into I will email you about when you get back home for another time we can talk, since
Yes,
she's traveling. So we have a good evening and enjoy. Be safe on your trip as well.
thank you.
It's
You
nice to
Thank
meet you,
too. Have a
Sylvia.
Yeah,
wonderful
thank you so
day.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
thank
Thank
you.
you, Jill, Walker, Vlad, and Alejandro, and Trish.
Thank
Persephone.
you.
Mhm.
All
That
right.
was a
Oh,
pleasant
that was
surprise.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, that was amazing. I'm glad if you watch her performances, absolutely amazing. Just the range of different animals she can, connect with, and their sounds and the vibrations, and so I thought with this chaotic energy, this would be a perfect time to kind of raise the vibration and uh, and have her come on for a song.
I
So
dig it.
Did anyone else notice that she literally transforms as she's doing that? I mean,
Yeah.
that's why I wanted to make her
you
bigger on that.
like you can almost like see it, but energetically, yes, she is
Yeah.
like coming all those different forms. It's pretty amazing.
When she's together with her soul brother, they have it's like, and they don't um it is like that. It's not like rehearsed. I mean, I'm sure some of them are rehearsed songs, like the zombie song. But as far as it's complete. They go together so well, and the flow of it, and the harmony and everything. And there's some where she's outside, and that's amazing. You see, literally, there's one of her videos. She's sitting amongst the trees, and you can almost see the trees vibration being, they perk up and start moving, and all the birds around her and everything. So it's absolutely amazing. So I can call doves. That's about it. I can't.
Yeah, that was incredible. I was meditating and listening to that and all of that, and that was, if I hadn't known better, with my eyes shut, I would have thought that I was out in a forest or out among nature.
Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of people didn't realize when she was on America's Got Talent and things like. They thought that that was like a background, like sound effects. No, she's actually making those sounds with her own voice, which is incredible. So
The full array of techniques that she used, like especially when the way she was able to slip in and out of like the multi-vocal cord throat singing, it just sliding in and out of it effortlessly. That was impressive.
It's incredible.
And is it the jaw harp? Is that what it's called?
The mouth harp, yeah.
Mouth harp. Yeah, to coordinate all of that would be. But yes, as Jill said, complete transformation there of different, and that's one of the things I want to kind of get into studying is the the voice transformation for healing as well. So because it raises your own if people sing, even if you sing like in the shower, it raises your vibration. I'm bad at it, so
Yeah, it's all about
but at least
chakra. Which is what you started talking about at the very beginning about how, Sallie House tried to like stifle us or quiet us or keep us from speaking. I mean, and that's what happened to Flood there, as he was literally like choking.
Yeah.
And that is that. I mean, that's, that's how you silence a person spiritually, is you attack their throat chakra. It's, that's how you communicate. That's your spiritual connection to speaking your voice.
And one of the which one is affiliated with shame and affects your throat chakra also? Gosh, I want to say I don't know. It slipped my mind as far as the demonic realms of that people. But again, to most, well, my perspective on demons is different than most people's. So I don't know. That's like shadow work stuff, but to most people, it's like a scary, I can't elaborate on that without getting kicked off YouTube or something, I guess. So
I always viewed them both as the same. It's more about who's engaging them and what their intent is.
yes, demon to some, angel to others.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I was going to say, one thing that I just recalled today was when Walker and I we were always like, I kept getting distracted. He's like, "Hey, do you want to go in the basement?" I'm like, "Sure." And I'd start going, then I'd get distracted. Like, I mean, I do have ADHD, but clearly, but this was like completely like drawing me away from it. Something didn't want me to go down there. And then on the way down, we had just talked about we had just talked about birthdays and synchronicities when we were outside. And so I knew when your birthday was, and I saw it on the tag of a fire extinguisher that had just been.
That's right. Yeah. My birthday was on the fire extinguisher down in the basement.
Yeah, like the inspection, ticket or whatever. And I was like,
wow,
that's interesting.
Yeah, I
but
forgot about that too.
But wasn't your birthday on? No, that wouldn't have been. Was that with? That wouldn't have been the fire. That wouldn't have been Beltane, the fire festival. Was that on that weekend?
It was close. April 25th.
Oh, that's still in the fire. But I thought that was interesting. And then, what did you all gather from the basement individually?
I felt like, well, I mean, that's where, you know, Walker captured that amazing EVP down there. I expected it to feel creepier than it did, but I think by the end of our time there, I still think that something was hiding. I just feel like something had slunk away to the basement. That there's more to that basement than just what you can see, because it's a fairly small room.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It definitely felt pretty normal overall. Like it was that almost was a place that I went down to and didn't feel as affected as like the rest of the house. I had like less experiences in the basement than other places. And like yeah, we got some good evidence down there for sure, but for the most part I feel like it was pretty even keel like compared to the rest of the house.
I think the only time that the basement felt different to me is when we were running the experiment with the sacred tones running through the speaker and like reverberating through the whole house. When I was down in the basement and I had my back to the hole in the wall, as it was ringing, like I got a really really distinct sense that somebody was right behind me, just kind of like looking over my shoulder. Didn't really feel threatened or anything like that, but it just distinct sense that I wasn't alone.
Something had taken an interest.
I don't know.
I didn't feel much of anything in the basement outside of just. It felt like a basement.
Yeah.
I didn't have any particularly, uh, energetic experiences, alarming or otherwise. Um,
Yeah, just
I
basement. And like I said, those stairs, I did not go in the basement a lot because I thought for sure I was going to take a header down them.
I
The non-existent bottom step.
Yeah. The Polaroids that I got down the basement stairs, though, I think were the most interesting that I kind of, I guess, experienced there. I took a couple snapshots down the stairs into the basement, and there was some visual, like it almost looked like something had scratched something out on the Polaroid shot in two
huh.
different places.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was really interesting.
And then there was almost something that looked like a thumbprint too.
I did get a few times. There was something with us in the basement that was afraid of something upstairs because one of the spirits there said, you know, he's coming or something, and like completely ran off or took off, which I can see because I didn't get a bad feeling really in the basement either. That's why I think it's more in the attic. You know, I think it's whatever's um got the negative energy is up rather, you know, rather than downstairs in that place. But I did get that there's like tunnels or something, which um is Kansas has some of the most extensive underground tunnel systems out of anywhere in the US. So that wouldn't be surprising if all of those houses are connected, you know, and there is where those bricks were kind of broken up, if that does go back farther and connect a lot of those houses. I did get that there was like open space underground or something.
Hmm.
Um and then and the reason this was relevant, like I and it just like it literally popped out of my mouth and I said, Jesus. And I'm like, where did that come from? But then when I was at the college, you know, a few months later, they have this giant Jesus statue, and up the hill right near it, which like there's something underground that leads there, um, on their maps, up the hill from that by the fountain, there's a time capsule. So I think that's why that was relevant. And it was from the 50s. So that's interesting too.
When's it
Because
due to
you're
be open?
not until like 2070 something, or yeah, long time from now. So
What do you
I'll
say,
let
gang?
I'll
Want
let
to
you
go
know how it
liberate a
goes.
time capsule before it's
Absolutely.
which is interesting. That's where, right by the fountain, and there's the Jesus statue in the fountain and everything, was where I took that video of the screaming in the background. So
Yeah. Which is what a great clip. Creepy as hell, but oh man. I wish we had that keyed up right now so that we could play it.
I know. I don't know how to get any of that on my feed here. But if you all knew what led up to that in my life that day, it was terrifying. I saw all of these statue, it's like bust sculptures they have behind one of the buildings, and they all look terrified, like they're dying. And I took pictures of those, and there was like nobody around anywhere by this time. It was maybe 5 o'clock ish, and I was walking around, and then I went in a science building, and I have a picture, which I can post and send to you all. That I don't even know what this guy looks like standing behind me in this picture, and there's nothing to reflect off the back wall because there's just a doorway. And there is such an interesting looking being standing behind me in the picture. And then that's when I walked out. I walked up the hill, and I saw this apple just thrown aside, and I'm like, switches, like we always pay attention to apples just thrown aside, right? So so I was like, that's a sign. And I sent that to you, Flood. And then it was right after that because I felt like something was following me, and I hadn't even looked at the picture. These were all on my aside from the apple and the other picture, or the video, the other pictures were on my digital camera, so I hadn't even looked at them yet. And I walked up the hill, and I felt like something was following me, and I'm like, oh. But I mean, obviously there was nobody behind me, nobody in that courtyard, and I just happened to take a video, and that was at the end of it. And I'm like, that damn apple. Poisonous apple. But that brings up another thing as far as all the cemeteries in Atchison. I don't know if they're the same as the ones in Topeka, but Topeka and Manhattan and a lot of the places in this state have a habit of moving the headstones and not moving the bodies.
I think
Or
that's
sometimes they don't even move the headstones. They just get rid of them and leave the bodies. But you think that's what? I'm sorry.
I said that happens a lot of places,
Oh,
especially if you have developers involved, and they know that if somebody knows there's a body there, you have to call in the state archaeologist. It's going to slow everything down. And so, because I know in Indianapolis at Central State, which used to be an insane asylum, there was one area where there's supposedly a lot of the patients were buried, and that is all now high-priced condos. And I heard from someone that they said, yes, they saw one of the workers out there with a wheelbarrow just picking up these stones. And then, after that, the bulldozers came in. And it is a place I do want to check back on, because it's incredibly haunted. And I think that stirred up a lot. And then not only did they have the infinite wisdom of doing that when they did the condos, streets are named after all the doctors that worked at the psychiatric hospital. That place has got it.
That's how it is here too.
Activity.
So a few years ago, when I was accidentally rerouted through Atchison, there were floods, and there was we came upon this place. Nobody remembers where it was at, but it was right outside of, like, when you get to Atchison. And this lady said she was there to view all the bodies that were floating up from, from the floods. And that got into, I'm sure that's happened in Atchison a lot, but where the apple came into mind with that was pre-Civil War. Well, I don't think they've used it since the Civil War era. They used to use an a really strong embalming fluid made from apples, but it was so toxic with the what's an apple,
Like the
cyanide.
apple
Cyanide.
cyanide.
Seeds.
Yeah, the apple cyanide was literally poisoning the groundwater, the soil, everything around it. Um, and that's when they had all those, all the water. They had the boil bans in Atchison, not because of that, just because of the floods. But that's what I was thinking from the apples. That's interesting that maybe it was kind of pointing me towards all the bodies that have been displaced.
Right. And I
Well,
mean,
for
to
numerous reasons.
be fair, I worked with a cemetery restorationist, and he said if you go into any given older cemetery, and you count the stones, he said if you may see 10 stones, but they could be maybe 50 people that were buried there. Not all of them were marked, or they were destroyed or lost over time. Or in the case of Native American burials, they were just an ordinary rock. Typically, if they were slaves, sometimes those were even just like a wood cross, that degraded years ago.
So speaking of Native American graves, one of in the basement when I was writing out in the letters, they're like those little refrigerator magnet letters, right? I was with Walker, and I spelled out Malik, right? I didn't put in like an I or anything on the end.
Yeah.
And that could mean numerous things, but one, Malek, I believe, means sacrifice children. And
So excuse me, but malic acid is the acid that is in apples, I believe. I think it is
ooh,
acid, yes.
see, that's another, huh?
So that's kind of interesting, feeding with the apples.
Yeah.
And
And that was at the I was at the college. I saw the apple. But the college is right by Forest Hill, so the sacrificing children thing. I was like, what does that have to do? I've gone over the Sallie Hall and Will Hall. She, they say, but she lived like 2 blocks up. She lived closer to Mound Street. She's the one that had like 15, 16 children in 14 years or something, but most of them had died. And I don't think that has to do with it, though. I think it has to do with, so Forest Hill being right by the college there, is where the Civil War era orphanage used to be, and there's cemeteries there, but there's only like 3 headstones now, and there's actually, I don't even know how many children were buried there, and said to have been abused and such at that orphanage. And my name is written in cement in the foundation of that house there. So that's what literally says Trisha, and so that's kind of what drew me there.
What house is this again?
It's one that sits in front of where the orphanage cemetery was, on top of it near Forest Park. Like it would be at the top of the hill from Sallie House. But that goes into different connections in Kansas with they would send a lot of Native American children to these homes, take them from their families and stuff.
Yeah, there was a whole pipeline, literally train loads, something that you don't hear very much about, but like from Indianapolis area, any of the, so-called orphans or children that were taken from their parents, they were literally loaded on trains and shipped out west to be labor, to be adopted, but they were becoming labor. And I'm sure as you got further out west and then you encountered native peoples, I'm sure that there are all kinds of atrocities
Oh yeah.
happen as a result of that,
That's interesting that word is you said a chemical in apples?
I believe it is. Yeah, I believe it's malic acid.
Yeah, you're right. I just looked it up
okay.
when you
Did
brought
you
it
look
up.
at okay, yeah,
Huh.
I wanted to verify that.
And it's spelled differently. It's MALIC, but still.
I wonder what that has to do with that. I mean, aside from, the whole poisonous apple thing. I mean, the campus poisonous? I don't know. Like, it could
If you
be.
start going down that rabbit hole, you'll end up like me with like pieces of red yarn connecting all these different spots on a map in the world. I'm not going to allow any of you to see.
That's right before the apple and that video. I have a picture or kind of a short clip of a cat that literally like glitched on camera. You could see its head like, and I was like,
Glitch in the
that,
Matrix.
yeah, absolutely. And I have proof of it on that right before I went up the hill to where that I took that video of the person screaming. So that's interesting.
That's a good one. Has everybody here? Jill, have you seen this?
No.
Okay, I'll send it to her after this.
I
You
wanna
two
see
have,
it.
or you and Walker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Yes.
It's pretty impressive. You got
Was it a black cat?
No, I'm talking about the video that she's referencing with the scream, and it's
Oh, that I've seen. Yeah, that I've seen.
okay. All right.
I wanted to see the glitching cat, and I was wondering.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I'll post that too. It's interesting.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
it,
Tag us
because
in it
this
when you do it.
cat it kept like coming out of nowhere and leading me to weird, like it led me to the middle of a prayer group and I felt so terrible. I was like, okay, that's not
Trying to
I
proselytize.
yeah,
Proselytize.
I was like, listen, cat, okay. So and then I would turn around and it would just be there randomly and um so I was literally kind of, joking or messing with the cat and I turned around real quick and took a picture and that's when it was in that picture that I'm like, gotcha. Because I knew it. I mean, the cat itself, I was like, is that a spirit? Am I just not like, does it look really alive to me? Because sometimes I can't tell, especially in places like Atchison, and or I was like, maybe it's, I don't know, there's something, it didn't feel like a cat. So my intuition, when something is not, doesn't feel like the being that it's portraying itself as. Ooh.
Yeah, that black cat that kept coming around the Sallie house while we were there didn't feel like a cat.
Oh, the plate. The paper plate.
Oh, with the
Yes.
tuna. Yeah.
What you feed. That's the first thing I noticed when I walked up there. And there's so much meaning behind that because you have have you all heard of hungry ghosts?
Oh yeah.
So there's that. And then of course there's like feeding into something, feeding into the hive, feeding into the whatever, feeding the places like that. Everyone who comes through there obviously is going with a specific. Most of them already know, have heard about the house or have some sort of preconceived theory of what's there, fear of something that's there. So that feeds into it, obviously. It's like the Marshmallow Man, on Ghostbusters, that it just grows into
Try to
one
think
big.
of the most innocent thing I possibly could have thought of. The Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
That's like, that's my favorite one. But that, and scientific terms, that happens with a lot of things in life. That happens with parasites. That happens with, you're talking about the vortices of malaria, you know, outbreaks and stuff the other day, that's how it happens. All these little tiny parasites attract and become one giant thing, and that's what reminded me of the house. Um, which I just said that malaria, that'd be in the water then. That's
Well,
interesting.
I did take a shower there and I did not get malaria. So at least we're
Well, but I mean, as far as the water, so uh, a lot of times, especially mediums and stuff, will use like a giant jug of water or something, especially moon water and stuff, to draw spirits to it.
Spring water. I use
Because
spring water for that purpose.
mhm, because they're drawn, the water, obviously being an element, attracts them. So with all the water surrounding, if there's also water underground, that's another thing to test, as far as, because they would be attracted to that too.
Well, especially in Atchison, we already know that they have tons of cave systems underneath there. So therefore, there's going to be tons of other water systems that are lesser known, like creeks in the caves, things like that. So the whole place is built to be a giant conduit, like that from one boundary of its town to the other. Like the whole thing, it seemed like it was specifically set up to be a channel.
Hmm.
Whole town.
And it was named the city that never dies. Maybe that's why I relate to it.
Does it actually have that nickname?
Yeah, yeah.
No idea, but
It was named that after, all the fires and floods and tornadoes and everything, early on, right after it was established, and every time it would come back, stronger than ever, and still be like a hub at that point in time for Kansas, well, for the Midwest, um, until the railroads stopped. I don't. They still go through there, but that's another thing. I've had experience with railroads.
The city that refused to die.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
metal. I love it.
So and it was the last time I'd been to Atchison since like 10 years ago. When my family first moved to Kansas, we went through Atchison, and I specifically remember this, and this brings up another story, or like another, I guess, question for you all. My dad was stopped at the railroad crossing. There wasn't a train coming. There was no train coming, and he started to go, and the arm fell on his truck. And he's like, "Oh no, it came out, and it passed right then, like it came out of nowhere." And of course, everybody knows about the whole train theory and paranormal and everything. But what is you all's theory on that? Trains coming out of nowhere and hitting people and such, and weird crossroad areas like that.
I personally think it's very similar to the reason why so many theaters are and art houses are haunted is because you have enough people going there collectively that eventually it builds up a charge. And like railroads in particular, come on, you go through the history of that. How many people died on those things in the building of our country as we continue to expand and grow? So using elements of the earth for a method of transportation kind of connects us to it in a weird spiritual way. So yeah, there is definitely something to railroads kind of being part of that conduit thing.
yeah, I think you're actually creating like a man-made ley line. I mean, because think about it, you're
Ooh.
Yeah.
down iron stakes, you're putting down the wood, and then you have, I mean, I don't even know how heavy, a train is, but you have all this metal just moving at a really high rate of speed. And coincidentally, you know, people around Indianapolis, all the way into Chicago, Illinois, and I think maybe down into Kentucky, they have caught glimpses of Lincoln's train. It's the Lincoln Ghost Train. And supposedly, if you go stand by any of these railroads that carried his body on the anniversary of that, you will actually see the funeral train. And
Wow.
I've heard from a couple of people that they've seen it. It appears out of nowhere. It's the big black, you know, steam locomotive. It's got
So
all the
you're
banners,
telling me we have another
body.
adventure?
Yeah, and his body is there, and you know, you smell the flowers that have been placed, because you know he was on the road for weeks, you know, and they were packing him with ice and flowers to try to keep down the decomp. But they smelled the decomp, they smelled the flowers, they saw all the pageantry, and then it was gone. But they had that, you know, that wind that, you know, as the train was like rushing past.
Wow.
And it would just be like in a fleeting moment. So yeah, there are people that on the anniversary of that train, they will go stake out some of these known railroad crossings where he went past.
Wow.
He did, you know, he did quite a tour, you know, before he was interred. A lot, I mean, people used to come out and they lined the streets when they knew the train was coming, and that's how everyone paid respect to his passing.
Yeah.
Big Boy came through Topeka this summer. It hasn't been in service since the 40s, and it's the one that Stephen King wrote about in was it his? Did he do like a twin towers, twin something?
Yeah.
Oh, the Dark Tower.
Dark
It's
Tower.
it's the Dark Tower. It's the Gunslinger series, and yeah, I think he had some early childhood trauma with a train, like Choo Choo and the Charlie and all of that. There's some weird train
There's
metaphors.
and you see it quite often, and look at Polar Express and yeah, a lot of children's movies
A
for sure.
Hogwarts train.
Hogwarts, yeah, Hogwarts.
Hogwarts Express.
Yeah, there's something really, yeah, because trains, they're really powerful. I mean, you know, it's just this mass of moving metal, and there's no stopping them.
I kept hearing Soul Asylum when we were at Sallie House, Runaway Train, you know,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I was like, I haven't listened to that even since the 90s probably. But another thing that's interesting, Stephen King did. I didn't realize this until just a few weeks ago. Actually, a lot of his novels were based on Kansas stories, because I believe his brother was at Meningers, the asylum that used to be in Topeka, and so he spent a lot of time in Kansas when he would come visit.
Huh. Really?
Interesting.
Yeah, so there's a lot of Topeka places. They're like, oh yeah, that train, yeah, that's because that's literally what he based his book on. And then there'll be like another place in Kansas, and they said, oh yeah, that's this movie, or like Cujo was formed here, or Pet Cemetery at Rochester. And I was like, what?
So all of his films take place in Maine, but they're filmed in the Midwest.
That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah, because he would spend, you know, they said a few weeks, a month. I've talked to people that worked at the hospital, actually. They said he would. Here's train.
But yeah, I mean, but towns lived and died based on trains. I mean, when the railway came through, towns flourished, and then when the train stopped, they became ghost towns. It really was a lifeblood to a lot of mostly Western towns.
Yeah, and that particular reason is why I want to do a revisit to Rural Hall here in North Carolina sometime in the next several months. That was one of the first places I ever went to do any live investigations, and we got pinged hard. That place is super active, but it's one of those stories of how like the benefits of the train were supposed to make this town flourish, but then comes the age of the automobile and everything just collapses onto itself. And so the township that they had planned kind of crumbled under the pressure.
Well, and then in the 50s, you know, Eisenhower, when all the super highways were built, then that came the collapse of, you know, Route 66 and Route 666 and all the smaller little roads. I mean,
Yeah, the towns.
you see those everywhere. You'll see all those little motels and things that, that used to be the boom town, and now there's just remnants basically.
I wonder, there was another, gosh, what is it? The Cray Mansion. Have you all heard of that one?
Where is it?
In Atchison.
No.
It's another
That's right.
supposedly
You
haunted.
mentioned that to me. Yeah, I haven't had a chance to really look into it yet, though.
I know the owner. I don't know that she only allows tours and such. I believe a certain time of year. I think. But yeah, that's another one that is kind of on that. But one of the main things, that New Mexico reminded me of, the Santa Fe Railroad, being there. And when I was leaving that night from the Sallie house, I passed the Fox, I don't know, restaurant or bar or whatever downtown there. You all might have seen it when you right down the hill from the Sallie house, and a restaurant that just said Mexico on the side. Why that was so relevant, because I kept getting Jericho. I'm like, what does Jericho have to do with anything? And it was actually a series filmed like in 2012 or something about these time travelers. And they go back to the nuclear bomb era. And that was one of the main things in New Mexico, is these like spies and agents had underground headquarters, I guess, under a place called the Fox, one with Mexico on it, and something that said Santa Fe regarding the railroad. I was like, well, that's interesting, considering. So that was another thing as far as mirroring other places, that, because those, like, their lights were flashing and stuff when I was leaving, and I'm like, that's something to pay attention to. So well, it is. I'm sorry, were you?
I was just set me loose on the Dulce Air Force Base, man. Let me get in there.
Oh, this is like, I haven't been back to New Mexico in, I don't know, like 20 years, probably 15. It's one of those places that is scary to me, for that matter, for those reasons, which is crazy, because there's so many people that want to experience aliens, and they're like, just take me, and I'm like, oh yeah.
So that's New Mexico and Arizona are both on the list for next year for sure. Sedona, Arizona in particular.
Oh yeah, there's amazing place. People don't even realize these places exist. Some of them are villages where the people don't leave those villages, and they don't have internet and such. When I lived on top of a mountain there, we didn't have all of these, like, UFOs and satellites and stuff. Giant microwaves were all. That's probably why I grew up a mutant. But we didn't really associate with the outsiders very often. So. But yes, I appreciate all of you coming on. I wish I had a way to display any type of video or sound or anything. I'll have to share that later, but that would make it so much easier. But I absolutely had an amazing time there with all of you. I learned a lot. It changed my perspective, especially on investigation teams. And you all don't. I realize you all are trying to take a more kind of scientific approach and changing things and the energy for in a more positive manner, rather than just exercising spirits and going through the jump factor.
I think deep down inside, we're all just trying to upset the status quo of paranormal research.
Oh, I mean, that'll do it.
Hey, thank you so much for having us, Trish. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
It was good seeing you all again.
Yes, and I
Oh,
cannot
family.
wait to join you all in the future. Hopefully soon this summer sometime.
Yeah, hopefully you'll be able to join us for the purported event in August if you're available. So you just keep us posted. You
Yes.
got a spot there if you want it.
And as far as listeners go, you all can find you have to go back and listen to all these podcasts because Flood does an amazing job of keeping us all on track as far as stories go, and they go over in detail all their experiences at the Sallie House and your other investigations, which are amazing as well. So where's the best, I guess, link to find you?
If you go to linktr.ee/Exvplanis, you can find us there, but that's really just for the podcast. Each and every one of us have our own things that's certainly worth looking into. But yeah, for Exvplanis, just Google EXVPLANIS. You'll find it. It's kind of hard to miss.
Yes, and Jill, where is your information now still? I think
I'm on Facebook and Instagram. I have a YouTube channel. It's all under Jill Weaver. And you can email me at thatoldwitch@gmail.com.
okay. Walker,
Yes.
tell us about your projects.
I don't have any fun stuff outside of Exvplanis. I'm really just here to investigate and help with the team. Yeah, you can always catch me hanging out talking about ghosts at any bar downtown Raleigh. So just come out and hang out.
That's you could make a whole podcast about that alone. Like
We've been trying. For
Funny
sure.
that you should mention that because we got some things up our sleeves.
I was gonna say, just in my one day of bartending a week, I get, my stories of my older customers and stuff, random stuff that comes in. What about you, Alejandro? You have a metaphysical
Yeah, that's still
shop.
definitely in the works for sure. But yeah, definitely keep an eye out for that. My personal Instagram is at Phazing Out, and that's FAEZENOUT. The shop that myself and my wife are fostering its growth and all of that is Leftover Stardust, and the Instagram for that has nothing on it yet. But
You're like me.
it's Leftover Stardust shop on Instagram, and then it's on Etsy too. We have a few things up. We have some specialized tarot spreads for readings that we do. That I think we've got 3 up now, but it's still definitely in the early stages. But if anyone wants to check it out, definitely it's Leftover Stardust shop on Etsy. So
I am looking forward to it, and Alejandro is an amazing channeler too. As far as interpreting messages and in your different methods of doing so, was really interesting actually. So
I appreciate you saying so.
well, no, I really enjoyed it, and obviously, like I accidentally that one was really meaningful to me, anyways, because my phone took a picture of it on its own. So. But yes, I will post. I have most of the links posted. I will have to definitely post some of the pictures and videos. And thank you all for joining me. Next week, I have Brad Kelly coming on from. He's a co-host to the Art of Darkness podcast and wrote the House of Sleep novels. He also designed. He's gone way into detail in his interpretation of tarot. So. Check that out. Thank you all for
Nice.
listening and joining us. Thank you all for accepting my invitation tonight to this craziness. So,
Anytime,
Thank you
Trish.
for
You
it.
know
Yeah,
that.
thank you so much. We appreciate it.
I was kind of worried it wasn't, when my computer crashed after I did this whole Sallie presentation thing. I was like, that's how it's going to be, huh? All right. Everyone else, have a good night, and we will see you next week.
All right.
Awesome.
Good night,
Thank you.
Trish. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Safe travels to you all.